Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Kabi Kabi people, and pay my respects to our ancestors past and present, and also acknowledge any elders or any Aboriginal people or Torres Strait Islander people in this room. My name is Bianca Beetson. I'm a woman, a mother, an artist, an activist, a teacher, a sister, an auntie. I'm a whole load of things, and we use all these names to identify who we are. But identity runs deeper than that. It's deeply embedded in our DNA. I am the genetic byproduct of my parents. My mother, she was of English, Irish and Scottish heritage from the Grant and MacGregor clans. My father, he's Aboriginal, Romani Gypsy and English. He's from the Kabi Kabi, Wiradjuri, Gamilaroi and Kukilanji people. My grandparents and my great-grandparents were both stolen generation. They were removed from Buderim and sent to Cherbourg, where they were raised under the Aboriginal Protection Act of 1869. This meant that they were taken away and made raised to act and think white. This had an intergenerational impact on my family because it saw us having to deny our Aboriginality if we wanted to stay together as a family unit. I grew up in a time, my parents met in a time when interracial relationships were not acceptable. My mother, she was a rich grazier's daughter. My father was a black man from the wrong side of the creek. This also led to more denial of our Aboriginal heritage. But as an artist, I often get questioned, well, if you grew up and were raised white, then why are you so interested in being black? And what is it about your research that makes you want to explore the other all the time? And for me, what it was the fact that I never ever believed that I fitted in either worlds. I was never black enough to be with the black kids. I was never white enough to be with the white kids. I was trapped in two worlds, searching for an identity. But Aboriginal identity, which I've discovered, my older age, and I understand the world better, Aboriginal identity runs deeper than just skin colour. There's a whole lot of things that makes up Aboriginal identity. And Aboriginal identity is about a way of being, a way of seeing, the way we interact with the world, the way we talk to landscape, the way we interact to country, the way we feel, the way we see the world, and the way we share our culture, and the way we interact with our families. And to me, that's what authentic Aboriginal identity is about. Being a fair-skinned child, growing up in the 80s, there was still a lot of racism. And as I said, I didn't fit in either world. I copped a lot of racism at school, not just from my peers, but from my teachers. My English teacher once said to me, "You will never be anything. You'd be lucky enough if you become, a checkout operator." That was kind of what she said to me. And, of course, I'm quite a stubborn girl. I'm a Taurus, and I was born in the year of the ox, so I can be incredibly stubborn. And, of course, those words were a red flag to a bull. So I thought, I'm going to show this woman, and I'm going to be successful. And I really have her to thank. And so she also didn't acknowledge my dyslexia. So my educational pathway was always very difficult and challenging for me. So after that year, I left that school, and I went to college, where I was lucky to get a really, really excellent education, and they gave me the support I needed to learn to read. And from there, I didn't pass. Look, I didn't say I wasn't a great student. I failed math, I failed English. I went to work in a restaurant, and after a year of working in a restaurant, I went, I don't want to do this. I want a real job. So I had this stupid idea of becoming an artist. I mean, still people keep asking me, well, what are you going to do for a real job? And so I worked really hard. A year later, I got accepted to QUT Visual Arts program. And I've got to say, I never looked back. I remember when I was about to graduate, my teacher once said to me, out of all you 50 graduates, in 5 years, 10 of you will be still working in the industry. And then in 10 years, 3 of you will be working in the industry. 20 years later, I'm still working and thriving in the industry. So I guess I was one of those lucky ones. Then when I left university, I was lucky enough to get a job at a place called Fireworks Gallery. That's where I met this beast that would control my life, and it still does to this day, and it's called Aboriginal art. It ignited the fire in my belly. It ignited my passion. And I would every day flick through all this artwork and go, oh, geez, I'd love to be able to make something that beautiful. But you know, I didn't have a right to. We have protocols around the way that Aboriginal art can be made. And because I hadn't grown up in that way, I did not have that right. So, you know, it used to leave me depressed and sort of sometimes wondering, I wish I could find my Aboriginal family. Then one day, a student from the Bovakai program wandered in. And I looked at him and I thought, geez, that boy looks like my dad. And we got talking and we became really good friends, and it turned out he's my third cousin. And so for the first time in my life, I was like, yes, I found my black family. And this big piece of the jigsaw puzzle of my identity had finally been put in place. And then after that, opportunity after opportunity came to me. And in 1999, I undertook a residency at the Noosa Regional Gallery. And during this time, I didn't get a lot of work done, but I did heaps and heaps and heaps and heaps of research. And I travelled all over the place, looking at every site and documenting it that I could find. And then, at the end of the residency, I was at the Noosa Museum in Pomona. And I'm just sort of having a wander around. I looked at the gallery, looked inside the museum, and this man came out to me, and he'd been inside a native title meeting. And he said, hey girl, what you doing? And we got chatting, as Murrays do, and we discovered that he knew my dad. Well, I was like, okay, well, I'm in. See, I'm authentic. So I know my dad. And then the more we got talking, I found out that he's actually my mob, and I was standing on my traditional country. So for me, that moment was just, you know, that boom, there goes another big piece of that jigsaw puzzle. And so from then on, more and more pieces of that jigsaw puzzle were given to me. That day we had these big conversations about traditional laws and customs. He taught me about the seasons. He taught me about the plants and the environment. And for 10 years, all I kept thinking about was that man that I'd met that day. And then 10 years later, I walk into a native title meeting, and that uncle's there. So we've had this lifelong relationship since then. And I thanked him that day as well. So as my career developed, so did my understanding of my art, my laws and customs. And I found a way to resolve this issue that I'd had for a really long time about making authentic art, because my art to me was not authentic. It was about as Aboriginal as Pauline Hanson. And so I started listening to country, because that day that that man had told me this was my country and where I belonged, I could finally had access to the energy and the spirit and the soul of land and of this country, of this place. So I started making the work that my country was giving me, that my land was giving me. And that's the stories I started telling. I was making work about energy and spirit and soul of the land. And so today, I'm on this journey with my work. And my work is about how, I like to tell stories as a traditional custodian of the land. I talk about connection to country. I talk about cultural revival and restoration. I talk about documenting historical places of importance and history. And of course, I'm a very proud Bunya woman. And many of you who live in the Sunshine Coast would know the importance of the Bunya tree and significance of the Bunya tree. So for me, the Bunya tree is my muse. I spend a lot of time as an activist in the community trying to stop the bunyas from being destroyed. And I do it in a non-violent way. I use my art as a way to talk about the Bunya tree. It's about educating people. So every time they see one of these works, they start to think about the tree and the significance of the tree. And in my public artwork, I talk about the bunya tree. I talk about my art as being a form of non-violent protest, because every time we see a piece of Aboriginal art, we are reminded whose land we are on. And in that work, we are instructed how to exist within that land and that country, within that artwork. There's not many ways Aboriginal people can have a voice these days, so we use our art, and that's what I do with my work. I'm lucky enough now to be in a position where I also get to share my journey. I teach in the Contemporary Indigenous Australian Art Department at Queensland College of Art, where I have students from all over Australia who are also piecing together this part of their jigsaw puzzle of identity. And I get to share these stories with them. And I talk about my journey and the struggles and challenges I had growing up and finding my identity and feeling comfortable with calling myself Aboriginal. Plus, I've also been given one of the most greatest parts of respect from my people as being appointed one of the applicants for the Kabi Kabi native title claim. That shows the respect that I've earned through my work in the community and appointed by my mob. My art has taken me around the world. I've seen lots of First Nations people's lands and countries and had that opportunity to sit down and talk about their connection to country, which is really important. And without my art, I wouldn't be where I am. I have a newfound respect for myself, my country, my land, my people. I'm no longer that dumb black kid that was bullied in class. I'm a proud Kabi Kabi leader who has found an authentic voice through my work, through my artwork, and a connection to country. That's what I call the Land's Edge.